You, me, and HIFMB. Stories of Science and the Sea.
Hello everybody and welcome to the next episode of the HIFMB podcast. Today I had Jasmin Groß and Elena Schall here. They are both from the Postdoc-Team of the Alfred Wegener Institute, which is our mother institution basically from HIFMB. And they were here to talk to me about the Wissenschaftszeitvertragsgesetz. The Wissenschaftszeitvertragsgesetz is the longest word in German you've ever heard. And it's an exemption to the Gesetz über Teilzeitarbeit und befristete Arbeitsverträge, which is a law that dictates after 2 years of being on a fixed-term contract, you need to be permanently employed by your employer. And the WissZeitVG is an exemption to this law that only applies to scientists. Why we talk about this law now is because it's being reformed currently, or it's meant to be being reformed, and the BMBF, the Bundesministerium für Bildung und Forschung, the Federal Administration for Education and Research, has released some statements where they want to how they want to reform this law, and it's being received with a lot of negative backlash, and we talk about this negative backlash and the whole story around it. Elena Schall is a bioacoustician, a postdoc who works in bioacoustics at the Alfred Wegener Institute, and Jasmin Groß is a food web ecologist also working with marine mammals. They both work with marine mammals, and Jasmin works at the HIFMB here and also at the Alfred Wegener Institute. So they are both postdocs. They're representing the postdoc network of the Alfred Wegener Institute, which fits well because the current reform of the WissZeitVG is actually being most negatively received from the postdoc networks. So there's a lot to talk about. I think the WissZeitVG is a law that is not very well known outside of Germany, but once you're in academia in Germany, it is a big deal. So we need to talk about it, and that's what we're going to do here. So without further ado, I give you Elena Schall and Jasmin Groß. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the HIFMB podcast. And today I have Elena Schall from AWI, from the Alfred Wegener Institute, and Jasmin also from AWI, but also from our institute, HIFMB. Today we are talking about one of the longest German words, I think, that I've ever seen, the Wissenschaftszeitvertragsgesetz, which is kind of an oddity that recently was announced to be reformed by our government. It's abbreviated the WissZeitVG, and it kind of means... What does it mean?
Okay, maybe I take it.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Jasmin. And basically it is a law that is allowing research institutes and universities in Germany to cut the amount of time that PhDs and postdocs are allowed to work in the academic sector. So you can work in the academic sector for 6 years prior to earning your PhD, and then 6 years after actually receiving your PhD. So in total, you are allowed to work in the academic system for 12 years. And after that, if you haven't gotten a permanent position, then you're not allowed to work in the academic sector anymore, at least not at a research institute that hires you. You would be allowed to do that if you have third-party funding to basically pay yourself your own salary.
This is kind of sorry.
So it's in summary, it's the limitation of time-limited contracts. So it limits the time that they can give you time-limited contracts. So that's what the law says basically.
And that's kind of special for Germany, right? Like, or that makes Germany special in a way for research, because I don't know of any country that also has this law.
Yeah, I think the difference in most of the countries is that there is no law for regulating that you cannot be on time-limited contract for the rest of your life, basically.
Yeah.
So in any other country, they just have you on 2-year contracts until you go to pension.
Yeah.
And in Germany, there is a law that does not allow that. So any company is only allowed to give you a time-limited contract for 2 years, and then they have to give you a permanent contract if they want to keep you.
Yeah.
And that's the case for engineers, for anyone who's working on administration stuff and everything like this.
Yeah.
Except for scientists, where it's allowed to give us a time-limited contracts for the 6 years prior to PhD and 6 years after.
Yeah. Which is super weird, because Germany has even a law for what you just said. Like it's called the Gesetz über Teilzeitarbeit und befristete Arbeitsverträge, the TZBFG. And that exactly says what you just said. So that after 2 years, they have to fully employ you and like get rid of your temporary contract. But now Germany came up with, in 2007, I think, came up with an amendment to this law, or that kind of undercuts this law, the WissZeitVG. So what we're talking about now, that only counts for science.
Exactly.
And why do they think that's good? Why do you think they think that's good?
Yeah. So I think the intention there was that if everyone who wants to be a scientist becomes a permanent position directly after the PhD, after a few years, there would not be enough positions anymore to get new scientists into the system.
Okay.
So because like population is growing, so more people want to become a scientist, and also it's unsexy now to do a normal job. It's everyone wants to study, no?
Yeah.
So there are more and more scientists coming after, basically, like coming into the system.
Yeah.
And to be able to employ them all somehow, they came up with this idea that they can give more temporary contracts to people for a certain amount of time, so that it's there is basically flow of personnel in the universities and institutes.
Yeah, because there's the view that people like us, postdocs, who are on temporary contracts, are clogging up the system.
Yeah, it's the other way around, that professors basically clog up the system.
Okay, right.
No?
Okay.
If we would all be professors or permanent researchers, we would clog up the system.
Yes.
Because then in 3 years or something, or 5 years, when new PhDs finish, there would not be positions for them.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And I think they really also fear that if you don't have any new scientists coming into the system, that there would not be any innovation in the system.
Yeah.
So basically what they're saying is that everyone who has a permanent position in research is no longer innovative. So all the professors basically don't have any ideas anymore, which is why we need to constantly have new people coming into the system, because if you're permanently employed, you don't have any new ideas anymore.
This is super strange. Like, let me give you a couple of numbers and facts that I got from you. So I didn't come up with these. Thank you for bringing me those numbers. So early career researchers, ECRs, they are about 82% that are on fixed-term contracts. That is a median. And with a median of 17 months and with a mean of 23 months. And on average, early career researchers in research positions work under 8 contracts in 12 years. That is from a study in 2022. So this is very atypical for any employment situation.
Yes, absolutely. And especially if you consider that the median length there was 17 months. The average PhD in Germany takes about 5.8 years. And so even if you are doing your PhD research, you usually only have a median contract length of 17 months. So you even need multiple contracts to even finish your PhD.
That's right. So the same study also did a survey of early career researchers, and 90% of them questioned in the survey that these working conditions are negatively impacting their private lives. 33% postponed family planning because of that, and 19% reported that their contracts ended during parental leave even. That's wild. That should be 0. Yeah, okay. So first of all, who are you two actually? Like a quick introduction of you, and why are we talking about this topic?
Yeah, so we're both researchers at the Alfred Wegener Institute, or the HFMB, which is a sub-institute of the
a daughter institute.
Yeah. We are postdocs, so we finished our PhD a couple of years ago, more or less, have now a temporary contract, as many others. Yeah. And we are supposed to work on science in some, like in my case, it's acoustics for marine mammals and fish in the polar oceans. And you have usually like 3 years. That's lucky, 3 years, I think. It could also be 2 year, 1 year contract of a postdoc. And then you're supposed to work on science there. And we also additionally took on a service role, basically. We're part of the Postdoc-Team, so we're representing all postdocs in the institute to talk to human research, the directorate, politicians, and try to get our needs out in the world and make them understand what we need to have a good career, a good work-life balance, and all these things.
Yeah.
For example, we also want to work on what home office rules are in these institutes, because we are very international and we are only allowed to work from home in Germany. And a lot of people have families outside of Germany. But yeah, and one other aspect is then, a big aspect we have been working on is this law, so the WissZeitVG, and what it does to our working conditions, our private lives, and what could be done to make it better, because there is reform happening right now to this law. So, yeah.
Exactly. Which is why this is currently at the forefront of science's mind in Germany. What exactly happened? So there was a reform in 2016 already to the law established in 2007. And now they want to re-reform it.
Yeah, because in 2016, not much has been changed, and then they have been evaluating what the impact of this law is on people's life, on scientific quality, on teaching quality especially. And yeah, the outcome of this evaluation is not very positive.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's very obvious that when you see that people who are always rushing to get the next contract, that the quality of what they do will be rushed as well. So they will publish anything quick, and they will teach anything quick, and that's how the quality of teaching and science then looks like.
Yeah, makes sense. And that's what they found in the evaluation.
Exactly.
Well. Yeah, okay, right.
I think what they also found is that people weren't particularly happy with having a lack of planning security in their personal life, because if you every 1 to 2 to 3 years have to look for a new position, which in the research area could also be internationally, it is not very easy to have a family, take care of parents, and most PhDs actually finish their projects around the age of 30. So just about the time that is, the time to have kids, or the time when parents start becoming elderly, maybe needing more care. So they actually found that very much goes against family planning, and that a lot of researchers don't have any kids because they do not have permanent positions. So no security of where they're going to live, where their next paycheck comes from.
Yeah.
Or they get kids like at almost 40, because then that's the time where you usually get a permanent position, if you get one, or you go out of science. And I don't think that it's by choice. I don't think we choose to be old parents, but it's just how we can do it.
No,
and
exactly.
It's a bit unfair.
Absolutely. Like it said in the survey, like 33% postponed family planning because of that. In comparison to other countries, does this law not make Germany very unattractive for anyone, for excellent researchers wanting to come here?
I think it technically does. Unfortunately, I don't think it's advertised a lot. So a lot of international PhDs and postdocs coming to Germany, attracted by a high quality of living standard in the country itself. We also do not have bad salaries in Germany in the research sector. But this fact about the WissZeitVG is actually not well known one. So people come here not knowing this and
find out about it while they're here.
Exactly. Then the clock starts ticking the moment they get a contract here, and they might be lucky to get 2-3 year contracts, and then they're 6 years up, and then suddenly human resources tells them, oh, sorry, we can't hire you anymore because you've done your 6 years under the Wissenschaftszeitvertragsgesetz as a postdoc, and you are no longer hireable. If you want to continue working, apply for some third-party funding.
Yeah, but we don't want to point out here that it is good as it is in other countries that you can have a temporary contract forever, no? Because I actually think it is better that they should give you a permanent contract at some point.
Which is, I guess, what they were aiming at with...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then if you don't provide more money to the institutes and universities, then how are they going to do that?
Yeah, that didn't happen. That part didn't happen.
And I think that's also why they're trying to look to reform the law again now, because they noticed that their initial plan of bringing people into permanent positions just later isn't working. And then 2016, the reform didn't change anything. And now we still have a lot of unhappy researchers, or are actually losing a lot of talent because the scientists just have to leave the system. And so we're losing a lot of very smart people in the academic sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So when this evaluation happened, do you know when it happened roughly?
The evaluation I think the results were last year, at beginning of the year.
Okay.
So I guess it took 1 or 2 years or 1.5 years to do all the the questionnaires and all this. But
okay. And then you as a postdoc team reacted to this with a petition.
Yes, we saw an information event that was hosted by two of the key unions that are representing researchers in Germany. And at the end of the information session, they basically called for action. And their call for action was be loud, make your voices heard, so that our Federal Ministry for Education and Research actually knows what the stakeholders directly impacted by the law want. So that's when we jumped into action and started writing a petition.
Yeah, and that became quite a job. I would say.
On top of your normal job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I would say it took like 3-4 months to some hours a week, definitely, by us two and another German speaker in the group, in the Postdoc-Team. Yeah, and it ended up to be 10 pages. First, we wrote it in English, and then we translated it to German because to send it also to non-English speakers, or because the law is in German. So
as the long name suggests.
Yeah. And so it's not 100% just our idea that just came out of nothing. We based our concept on ideas that were proposed before by the Junge Akademie. So the Young Academics is also it's not a labor union, but it's like a union of...
I would say it's a representative body of early career researchers in Germany. Yeah.
Okay.
And what, anyways, in the European law is already defined as who is a R1 researcher, so a researcher earning the PhD still and so forth. There are stages you have to go through. And then we have thought of all these stages from PhD student to professor and in between, and what we think should be the conditions these people should work in. Yeah. Because, of course, if you just leave it to everyone can do whatever they want to, it would probably not become a good working condition for everyone everywhere, because some directors might have more empathy with PhD students than others, and then it's not a real fair system. So that's why you actually need the law at the end. What we have defined there is minimum contract length for all these stages. For example, for PhDs, 4 years, because a lot of the average time is 4 point something years, 4.1 or something like this. I think it's 5.8, but we proposed 4 because that's the international standard. That's the okay, yeah.
Right, okay.
But 5.8 also includes social science.
Okay.
So it's not just in natural science, it's lower because we have usually 3-year contracts.
Yeah, okay.
And then for postdocs, we propose like a reduced time of 2 to 4 years where you can have a non-permanent contract. And then you should get a tenure track, it's called. So basically they agree on certain goals that you have to achieve within a 2 to 3 year period, and then they should give you a permanent contract after that. And all these permanent contracts then should not only be professorships, but also for other permanent duties, basically. In German, it's called Dauerstellen für Daueraufgaben. That's like the slogan they always have. Because you don't only need professors to have a working scientific system. No? There are big, complicated machines that have to be handled by researchers that have to be learned new every 3 years when a new person comes. It makes no sense. Yeah. It makes absolutely no sense. And then there has to be outreach we are all supposed to do. No, we have to take our science to
the wider public.
To wider public, exactly. Yeah. And this takes a lot of time. And it makes no sense that everyone creates their own material every 2 years new. Yeah. So there should be permanent positions for this.
Absolutely.
And so forth. Group leaders, management of projects, all this is permanent work that has to be done. Yeah. Yeah, and this we have defined in this petition, basically. And then in the end, they are also professors, but this basically is no change to the current situation.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to make one thing that we also proposed in our petition was a rewards and sanction scheme for institutes and universities, where the rewards would really incentivize the universities and research institutes, or the employers basically, to actually have certain percentages of fixed term versus permanent contracts, so that we slowly increase the number of permanent positions that we actually have. Because, I mean, right now 82% of early career researchers are on fixed term contracts. That number is way too high. It's not sustainable. So we also proposed a rewards and sanction system like that hopefully would actually help turn the dials in our favor.
Excellent. Okay. And I just read through it again, and in your final petition, you mentioned that you do not see the abolishment of the, ideally you would call for the entire abolishment of the WissZeitVG entirely, but you do not see this to be likely as an outcome of the current re-evaluation happening in the Bundestag. Why do you think it's unlikely that it's going to be abolished?
First, I think you kind of need an exception to the normal law for PhD students.
Okay, yeah.
Because otherwise they would also have 2 years and then they would need to be a permanent contract so before they even finish their PhD.
Right, yes.
And there are also still people who don't finish their PhD because they discover that they don't like academic work while they're doing the PhD. No? There are people who discover that they don't like writing publications, for example, and then it makes sense that these people don't continue in academics, I would say. And for this we need an exception to the normal law.
Okay.
But we think it could be possible to have the normal law counting from after the PhD, basically. So that after the PhD, you could be employed by any institute university for 2 years on a fixed term contract. And then after that, they would need to give you a permanent contract.
Okay.
But in comparison to the WissZeitVG, this would allow you to change university or institute within Germany and get a new fixed term contract. So they can evaluate if they like you, basically, if you fit in the system. So for example, I would be hired at AVI now, and I could then, if my contract runs out and they don't give me a permanent contract, I could then move to, I don't know, Osnabrück or something, and I would not need to move to the USA or no. I mean, it would be a little bit closer to my family, maybe, more feasible for
Exactly.
because I might also have a partner who wants to move with me, and moving to a different country might be
family life.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly,
help.
and the normal law after the PhD would then allow for this, so that you move between institutes and universities within Germany if you have not found your perfect spot, basically. And now, when the 6 years are over, you cannot get hired at a different university.
Right, okay.
But I also think they are unlikely to abolish the law completely, because they simply don't want to provide more funding for actually creating permanent positions. And in Germany, the big problem is that this law is actually at the federal level, but a lot of our funding for universities and research institutes is actually at the state level.
Of course.
So the federal government wants to use this law to force the states to put more funding into the academic sector, but that hasn't been working thus far. So I think they are unlikely to give up on this plan of trying to force the states to invest more money, but the federal government is also not willing to invest more money.
Even though this should go hand in hand, I feel like.
Yep.
Okay. So, and then the evaluation came out, then your petition to the evaluation came out, and then they released the Bundesministerium für Bildung und Forschung, the Federal Ministry for Education and Research, then came out with an Eckpunktepapier. So that's like briefly summarizing the reform that they plan, basically. So a brief summary. And what happened then? So they then released that, and thinking that they might have seen your petition. Yeah.
Well, so what happened then was a really big backlash, because there were I think 5 or 6 key points that they released. And the points that they released for the PhD phase were actually quite well received, because they stated, for example, that all PhDs should have a minimum contract length of 3 years. So that would be a big improvement to the current median of 17 months.
Yeah. Okay.
But for the postdoc phase, they really want to reduce the time that you are allowed to be on a fixed term contract down from 6 years, so the current 6 years, down to 3 years. So that would basically mean that you have 3 years after your PhD completion to basically become a professor, to to get a permanent position.
Yeah.
Because there isn't many other permanent positions in the German academic system besides professorships. And that is kind of what a lot of people really don't see happening. A lot of people think that it's simply not feasible within 3 years to go from completing your PhD to getting a permanent position with a lot of responsibility like a professorship.
Yeah. What they say, what the BMBF always calls it, it's like a qualification phase still, your postdoc basically. And if they see it as a qualification phase, then you would, in these 3 years, you would need to simultaneously apply for projects, gain supervision experience, complete research, publish at a high level, and apply for a permanent position within the proposed timeline of 3 years. So okay, great.
Leaves no time to do science, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is really like this, because you have maybe a 3-year contract, but in the last year you already get nervous that your contract runs out, and you cannot just apply to. There are not so many jobs you can apply to. There are basically no jobs you can apply to. So the only thing you can do is either make contact with people who might be able to create a position for you, or you apply, or simultaneously probably apply to a lot of third-party funding, which makes you spend of a 3-year contract at least 1 year of only doing this. So all the money that is going into your salary is basically to apply for more money for a new salary, which is wasted money. It's tax money that it's wasted. Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, if we're speaking about this qualification, which is the main reason why they say we can be on fixed-term contracts rather than permanent contract, that would mean the 3 of us sitting here, we are all still in training. So the 3 years of undergrad that we did, the 2 years of postgrad that we did, plus the 3 to 4 years of PhD that we didn't qualify us enough to actually have a permanent position. We're still underqualified.
10 years at university.
Yeah, but if you then apply to a normal job, you're overqualified. No, if you try it outside academic, then you're overqualified.
Yeah.
So it's we are walking on a very thin line between over and under qualification.
Yeah. There's friends that I have who wanted to apply for who have gotten a PhD and wanted to apply for a teacher job, and they thought they were overqualified.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the main problems, that in this law, they name this qualification reason, give you a non-permanent contract everywhere, and it's written in our contracts and everything, but there's no definition of what they mean with qualification.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some vague lists of stuff that you are supposed to achieve, but anyways, no one can achieve all the things that they want us to, except for maybe workaholics who work really 80 hours a week. But then they go to burnout very fast. So
I guess,
there's no definition what they want us to be qualified for.
Yeah.
Because habilitation is not the thing they mean.
Yeah.
If they would mean that, then at least you would know what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a lot of people habilitating anymore, because you can also be a professor without it. So in the end, it's a lot of things very random and very vague somewhere in the air that you're supposed to be qualified for.
Yeah, okay, right. I thought they meant, or I thought that could be the only thing that they meant, was that you are qualifying to become a professor. But I guess, no, doesn't really fly.
I think habilitation is not very up to date anymore. I think not a lot of people are doing it.
Exactly, yeah. And I had a friend who did an habilitation, which is, I think it's an old German way of becoming a professor. Like, it's similar to your PhD, where you write a thesis, a habilitation thesis, and then you're a professor. But a lot of funding bodies don't acknowledge this habilitation anymore. And now you're kind of... She ran herself into a Einbahnstraße in German.
Dead end?
Dead end, thank you. Into a dead end where she was habilitated, but then there was no funding for an habilitated professor, basically, to continue working.
Yeah, and I also don't really see what this habilitation, how this increases teaching quality.
Yeah.
Because they should rather learn how to transmit information to a new generation than writing another thesis.
Yeah, exactly. Write another thesis. I was just going to say that. And plus, not everybody at the qualification phase we're currently in wants to become a professor anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah. Some people, I've talked to many who are quite happy in this position as a, let's say, full-time researcher, and would like to continue this.
I mean, I see the problem that I think most people, if they can choose, would choose full-time researcher.
Yeah.
And then not a lot of teaching would be happening, no?
Yeah, yes.
It's just more attractive if you can do your own stuff on your desk and in your lab and no one criticizes you. You don't have to confront other people, no? We're not the most social people, maybe, at least biologists are not, and chemists and physicists, no? Mathematicians. So I think there has to be maybe a more flexible system that you don't have to be a full-time professor or full-time researcher, but it can be mixed. I think that would be healthy, because then you would not be overwhelmed and overfed with only teaching. Yeah. And bored maybe also by doing over and over the same thing every year. But you would actually have time to do some research next to it, and you would also have some new thoughts and new findings that you could actually transmit to students to make it more interesting and not talk about the same thing for 30 years. Yeah. And I think that would be probably the smartest way to go, to just allow for 50-50 or 20-80 or whatever, percentage of teaching versus research.
Sounds great to me.
And then the habilitation thing is also kind of a lot of effort if you only do 20% teaching for 30. No, it's like,
Yeah, so I was wondering this Eckpunktepapier by the BMBF came out in March. And when it came out, I was wondering, who are they advised by? Like, many people noticed, I got a joint statement from the postdoctoral networks here, and they noticed that the active participants in the pertinent discussion were not postdocs, or very few postdocs. Like, none of the large German postdoctoral networks were involved at all. And since it's shooting in quotations directly at postdocs, why weren't postdocs involved?
That's a really good question. I think currently who is advising the Federal Ministry for Education and Research are a lot of people who are more representing the employer side of things rather than the employee side.
Yes.
So a lot of stakeholders, for example, were involved in a discussion regarding those key points for the reform, because there was so much backlash on Twitter about these key points. And the people who sat in that debate were mainly heads of universities, heads of the big research communities in Germany. It was people who are sitting in German funding bodies that provide funding for science research. But there were really only two people that were on the postdoc side of things. One was a representative of the Ich bin Hanna sort of initiative. So the Ich bin Hanna initiative is a Twitter campaign started by a few early career researchers when the WissZeitVG really sort of kicked off and people saw how bad it is for their career. So they started to be vocal about the troubles that they're facing with the law. So they had one representative sitting in that debate. And then they also had one other representative from the Junge Akademie, so the young academics, which we already mentioned before. They represent early career researchers in Germany as well. And those were the only two people really sitting in that debate that represented postdocs a little bit. But both of those were also not really PhDs or postdocs.
Yeah, they were junior professors.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So with this Eckpunktepapier, there was it's in German, I can't translate this on the spot, like a statement by professors who are siding with the postdocs in this case. And they mentioned in their response to the Eckpunktepapier, they mentioned that there is apparently a larger restructuring of German academia happening, and that this is supposed to be a lever for that, so kind of kickstarting this whole thing. What are they talking about? What do you think they're talking about?
We have also sit in some political discussions, and we've met with the labor unions, and what they mean is that everyone basically agrees on that we don't need all this money in third-party funding, because there's a lot of money in this. This money is only possible to give for fixed-term contracts, because it's always restricted to the project length you get for this. You get this funding for. And all this money could be redistributed to universities and institutes to create permanent positions, or at least a big part of this money. We don't say, or a lot of people say that a big part of this can go to the general money a university gets
Yeah.
per year or per funding period
Yeah.
to create permanent positions, instead of going into projects and projects and projects that always run 3 years and
Yeah.
never achieve what they pretend to achieve, because you have to compete so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's this general restructuring that they mean, that the money has to be redistributed in a different way, and so that permanent positions can be created from this money.
Yeah.
I think what they're also referring to is that the German system, or what they're trying to aim for, is to slowly shift the German system towards a more Anglo-Saxon system. So right now, for example, professors usually write a habilitation to get their professorship, and they're already changing that in the system a little bit more, so that they're offering tenure track positions for early career researchers that do not include a habilitation. So that's, for example, one of those shifts. And another one of those shifts is actually that in Germany we do not have a lot of lectureship positions, and so I think they're also trying to aim to have more of those permanent positions that are actually with a higher teaching load and less of a research load, to bring those into the system. Because right now what we really have is we have a lot of early career researchers, and then we have professors, and we are really kind of lacking the middle in Germany, because we do not have lectureships like they have, for example, in the UK, in the US.
I feel like that Anglo-Saxon adaptation, or that move towards the Anglo-Saxon way of academics is in large part maybe to blame a little bit, because the habilitation that we spoke about before is still like a remnant of the previous old German way of doing things, or like in some universities a couple of years ago you could still get your Dr. Reanat, which is like the German way of a PhD, equivalent to a PhD, but a lot of those old German things like habilitation, Dr. Reanat, they stick around, but the new Anglo-Saxon things are coming in as well. And now there's like a mix, and nobody really knows how to mix this properly, because it's not really very well mixable.
Yeah, I think we already had that kind of first transition phase. Basically, I think by the time we sort of all started university, because I think we were sort of the first generation that actually did a bachelor's and master's in Germany. Before that, people always used to do a diploma, which was actually the diploma was a German university degree that was 5 years in total, and you wrote your diploma, and then you were qualified for a lot of jobs that required a university degree. And then they split it up into the bachelor-master system, like they have in Anglo-Saxon countries. And
which is more adaptive, I feel.
Exactly,
more flexible.
We're the first
then
ones
you
to do that.
can go abroad for half of it, no? If you do a diploma, then you're kind of stuck in one university.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like the Anglo-Saxon restructuring or adaptation is a good thing, but the old German ways are sticking around.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're a slow-moving country.
Yeah, sometimes. Okay, and then towards all this negative press and the negative backlash on Twitter and the statement by the professors and the petition by you, how has the BMBF or how has our government reacted to this?
So I think the Eckpunktepapier came out on a Friday, and like even over the weekend, there was so much backlash that they actually retracted some of the points in that Eckpunktepapier. So it was a very quick turnaround. They noticed how unhappy people were with what they proposed. Then they held this debate to hear again people's opinions. I mean, by that time, they had already been working on this for almost a year. So I'm not sure what kind of advisement they got during that time. But
probably, shit, we should have asked postdocs.
Yes, but then they needed that other debate. And now it's back to the drawing board again. And we're not expecting anything before the end of the summer, kind of, in terms of a new Eckpunktepapier or like a more detailed version of the reform.
Yeah, but what's the next likely outcome for this? Or what do you think?
I mean, I have my slight suspicion is that we actually won't end up with a lot of change in the postdoc phase. I think they will stick to the points that they made for the PhD phase.
Oh yeah, is the 3 years, they didn't get retracted?
No, they didn't get retracted. So the PhDs will probably get the minimum contract length of 3 years at least. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think postdocs will just be stuck with the status quo. I honestly don't think that we're moving much because people didn't really like the 3 years. They also don't like the 6 years. So we might have a number in between 3 and 6, or we might actually stick with the current 6. I don't see a lot of improvement for the postdocs actually coming out of this. But
yeah, I would agree that I think the law itself would probably stay with this, but this whole debate will hopefully move something, because in the end, often these politicians in these discussion rounds also say the WissZeitVG cannot change all the things that we want to be changed.
Yeah.
Because it only regulates the contract length for scientists, but it does not regulate where the money goes to. No, it does not regulate how many third-party funding there is. It does not regulate if a university has to create a permanent position or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there will be changes, or I hope there will be changes beyond the WissZeitVG, the distribution of money, the definition of other career stages besides professorship, so permanent researcher, management, all this. But this will take probably years, and I think no one is so sure about where this actually has to be regulated, because a lot of it is regulated on the state level.
Yeah.
And to make it fair so that all the states kind of are on the same page will be complicated.
Yeah.
I really hope we get some definitions out of the process, at least so that we know what the qualification actually is, because it's not defined right now. And I actually saw a very interesting post by a German politician who basically said that this law is an exception to the rest of the German law.
Yeah.
And to have an exception to a law, you need to provide really good reasons. And he actually thinks that they haven't provided really good reasons why we need this exemption. And there's a few other things that this WissZeitVG regulates besides the contract length. And one of them is, for example, that we're also not allowed to be represented by unions. So we actually cannot unionize under the WissZeitVG. And he actually said, like, there is absolutely no reason why there is an exemption that early career researchers are not allowed to unionize. So there's a mix of things going on, but I really hope we get some definitions out of it. Maybe we get out of it that we can actually unionize, because there is no good reason why we shouldn't be allowed to do that. But yeah, I think otherwise it's not going to change much for us.
Now, with having read the statement of that German politician, do you still stick with your statement from the petition that you think it's unlikely to be abolished? Because it sounded like maybe it's gonna.
No, I think it's unlikely that they're abolishing it, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they would need to redistribute the money before.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if they abolish and they don't redistribute the money, then there will really be a lot of people with a PhD on the street from one day to the next, more or less, no? Because they don't create new positions, which the law can't do, but it has to be regulated over the states and the university regulations on all this. Yeah, then it's just kicking us out earlier, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would have reason to sue for a permanent position.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you've been longer in your position than 2 years, then you would have reason under the normal law to sue to get your permanent position.
Yeah, but for this they can do like a Übergangslösung.
Like a transition
phase. Yeah.
Yeah, they could, but I still think they're also quite worried about people suing.
Yeah, okay, maybe. Okay. You said that maybe we were going to hear something from them again in summer. Maybe we can hear from you again in summer, because normally we interview our guests and like we go into their CVs a little bit. Like I want to know about you two as well. So perhaps we can keep each other updated on this and the podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can do that. We'll see where we're going.
Great. Yeah, let's hear about this again, because it needs to be talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much for coming.
No worries. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Next time again in summer or sometime after that.
After
summer, yeah. All right.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
Want to dive deeper? Surf over to hifmb.de or follow us on Twitter at hifmb_OL.